I've had to apologize to my friends for this because I wouldn't commit to anything 6 months in advance. I don't know what my life is gonna look like. I cannot possibly commit to that right now. What do you mean you can't commit to going to see your friends in 6 months? But I had a fear that, like, something else would come up, like, something spontaneous would come up, and I wouldn't be able to go do that because I already had plans, which is ridiculous because having plans with my best friends, like, what is better than that, right? Welcome to the Blue Rose Podcast. I'm your host, Becca Blue Rose, a runner, storyteller, and believer in creating a life that feels like your own. Some weeks it's just you and me, and other weeks I'm joined by women who are chasing their own version of a bold, unapologetic life. Together we explore what it really means to take risks and trust your own path. Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. Super glad that you guys are here today. It is a lovely Sunday morning. I slept until 9 a.m., got myself a coffee. Now I'm working on my podcast, and I didn't just roll out of bed and eat a bagel and go for a run this morning, and that feels luxurious. There's little things in life that feels luxurious for today, and I'm so grateful for myself for doing that for myself, and I planned this, like, slow morning for myself because I'd really been needing it, and I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so grateful that I put that in my schedule. So this is your reminder that if you feel like you need some you time and you need some relaxation, some slow morning time, put it in your calendar. Because you know what we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little bit about planning. And yes, I've talked about planning in the past few episodes, but this one is a little bit different. So if you listened to last week's episode, I talked about pivoting, and I talked about having a plan A and not wanting to rely on your plan A so much, and being able to have a plan B and have that flexibility and have something else in life if your plan A doesn't work out, and that not being a failure, but that actually being a really good thing because it makes you more durable. It just makes you able to respond to life, because life will inevitably do what life does and take you down paths that you did not expect. And so just having that flexibility helps those life transitions feel a bit easier. But today I want to talk about boundaries and constraints and how that can help the flexibility that I talked about in the last episode feel a little bit more sustainable, and how I don't actually think boundaries and constraints restrict your freedom. I think they actually help it, which is crazy coming from me. Like, if you are listening to this and you know me, you're like, "What, Becca? Like, that's crazy, right?" But this is actually something that I've been hearing over and over again, and it's something I just talked to a friend about. It's something I just listened to a podcast about. And then I think I was journaling yesterday at a coffee shop, and I was like, oh, there's many ways in my life where, like, I hadn't been putting constraints and boundaries, and it just kind of felt like I was all over the place. And now that I have constraints and boundaries, I'm just like, oh, like, I don't even think about it. Like, it doesn't take up as much brain space as it used to. And, something I do talk about on this podcast a lot is how, yeah, I wasn't a planner. And I feel like this year, 2026, is the most I've ever planned. It's the most organized I've ever been. And it's something I've been working on for a while because I kind of felt like my life was just all over the place, and I was constantly overthinking things and constantly having analysis paralysis and just not making decisions. And then also just, I was not making decisions because I was afraid that, like, something else or something better would come up. And it's something I've talked about on this podcast. It's something that I've even apologized to my friends for, because, I wouldn't make plans 6 months in advance because I would always be like, well, I don't know what my life's going to look like. But the thing is if I don't plan it and I don't commit to it and I don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen regardless. Like, we can dream and we can think that, we all have good intentions, but life gets busy. And as we are adults, like, things just come up that we don't expect. And so if you don't have it on the calendar, it's so easy for it to just kind of, like, fall through the cracks. The first thing I want to talk about is creativity and setting these constraints, and, like, how do we even do that, right? And so in the last episode, I talked a lot about having a plan B and how you have to try new things in order to know what you like. And in order to do that, right? Like, okay, say we're talking about a week like Sunday to Saturday, and you're sitting here and you're like, Becca, like my Monday I do this, my Tuesday I do this, like I'm busy and like time just goes away and you don't know where it goes. What I do now is I sit down at the beginning of every week and I plan out my days. I'm like, and this isn't like news to anyone if you're a planner, like you're like, yeah, Becca, I already planned my days. Like I know exactly what I'm doing. But the point is that you can't just hope that creativity is going to like spark and that you're gonna like have time to do it. And you can't just hope that you're gonna have time to work on that thing that you've been wanting to work on forever, right? And so what I want to use as an example for this concept is my podcast, right? So I've been doing this podcast for 3 years now. And I can honestly say that I have not always loved doing my podcast. I have definitely had days where I'm just like, the last thing I want to do today is sit down and work on my podcast. And I'm going to tell you that for the past 3 years, so this year is probably, I would say the first year, right? I was just doing it to do it, right? Like I didn't necessarily care. Like my goal was to put out 2 episodes a month. And then I kind of was like, I want to get to 100 episodes. And so when I was doing that and I had a goal, I was so consistent because I was working towards that goal. And then after I got to 100 episodes, I was kind of like, well, I don't know what the goal is. And so I got to 200 episodes, but like I think from episode 100 to 200, there was a lot of episodes in there where like they didn't happen or I'd skip a week, or right now my cadence is like solo episode, guest episode. And I don't know, weeks would go by and I would skip my solo episodes because I didn't feel creative. I didn't feel like I had anything to say. I was like, what do I even talk about today? Like, absolutely nothing. I would rely on my guest episodes to carry me through. But then sometimes I was like, oh, I'm not scheduling on time. And so I was like, oh gosh, I don't even have those episodes. And so then I would skip a week or I'd skip 2 weeks. And once you skip one week, it is so easy to keep skipping weeks. And so what I've learned about my podcast is that for years, like for the first 2 years I was doing my podcast, it was consistently on my mind. Like Monday through Sunday, I was like, I felt guilty if I was doing anything but working on my podcast. I think that's why I got into a book funk. I've talked about that. I like stopped reading completely because I was like, every time I would sit down to read, I'd be like, but I need to be working on my podcast because if I want my podcast to grow, I have to be working on it 24/7 or whenever I'm free. And we are taught that. We are taught that you need to be working on your dream or your goal 90% of the time, 99% of the time, if that's what you want to do. And I get it. You have to work towards your goals. That's great. But when it consumes you to a point that I was like not being social, I wasn't reading, I wasn't doing any of the other things I wanted to do, I wasn't trying new things. When it consumes you like that, it's like, well, how do I create a system where I feel like I can work on my podcast and I feel like it's getting somewhere and I feel like I'm growing and I feel like I'm challenging myself, but also I get to be social and I get to try pottery and try something new and I get to hang out with my partner and not feel guilty for not working on my podcast, right? Like, how do you do that? And so that's where the constraints and the boundaries come in, is because if you've ever heard this, people talk about it in creativity all the time. It's like you have to schedule the time for yourself regardless of if you're in the mood, right? I pick one night a week that is a non-negotiable. This is my podcast night. It's like making plans with my friends or making plans with my partner. It's like, this is the night that I am doing that and I am not changing my plans. Like I have plans that night. And it can feel really easy to not stick to that because it is your plan with yourself. It's like anyone who knows that, like, you plan a self-care night and then like your friend texts you and you're like, they're like, do you want to hang out? And you're like, oh, like I should go be social, but also like Becca just needs a bath and like a face mask. Yeah, don't cancel on yourself. And this is something I had to learn the hard way because I was doing really well where like Mondays were my nights. I would say no to everything on Mondays. But now that it's summer, it's kind of gotten like, well, but I want to go do that and I want to go do that and I want to go do that. And so now I've had to be more flexible and I'm like, okay, no matter what, I'm picking one night. It doesn't have to be Monday night. But guys, the amount of freedom I feel with that constraint of one night a week being my podcast night is crazy. I every night I used to come home from work and I used to stress and I used to feel guilty and I used to say, I should be working on that. I should be working that. It's all I could think about. It consumed me. I seriously could not function. And I would always get stuck in this analysis paralysis because I'd be sitting on the couch and I'd be like, okay, well, I could read or I could work on my podcast and I should be working on my podcast or I could stretch and do mobility for running or you know what I could just go take a bath, right? There's so many different things when you get home from work or before work or whenever whatever your schedule is like. There's so many different things that we could do all the time. And so scheduling it for yourself and treating it like this is a plan with a friend and I'm not going to cancel it regardless of how I'm feeling. Like if you're sick or something, yeah, whatever, cancel your plans. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is picking something and sticking to it and allowing that constraint to give you freedom. And to me, that sounds crazy because I'm like, what do you mean constraints give you freedom? Ask me a year ago and I would have been like, what are you talking about? Ask me now where I've like been doing it for a good like 6 months. And I can honestly tell you, I just feel so much better because I'm committing to working on something for myself, but I'm also allowing myself the time to be like, you know what? Like podcasting is not my full-time job. Podcasting is something that I love doing and I would love to see grow and I work on, and it's a passion and it's amazing. And my friends are also a passion and I love hanging out with friends and meeting new people. And trying new things is also a passion. I love experiencing new things and getting after like pottery or painting or I don't know, I have a friend getting into knitting. Like I love exploring other areas of life that maybe I am not an expert in and I love learning. And you know what? I also love spending time with my partner and I also love having a self-care morning. And for me, in order to make things sustainable, I have to have flexibility, but within boundaries. I consistently get stuck in this overwhelm of like, there's too many options. And like, how many times this is something that I've really tried to get better at because, like, I'll be honest, I've had to apologize to my friends for this because I wouldn't commit to anything 6 months in advance. I'd be like, "I don't know what my life is gonna look like. I cannot possibly commit to that right now." I was just like, "No, like, I cannot do that." And looking back, I'm like, what do you mean you can't commit to going to see your friends in 6 months? But I had a fear that, like, something else would come up, like, something spontaneous would come up, and I wouldn't be able to go do that because I already had plans, which is ridiculous because having plans with my best friends, like, what is better than that, right? But then I was like, "Well, what if something spontaneous comes up and I wanna say yes to that?" And I think that was a byproduct of, like, my friends not living where I live and I wanting to make friends where I'm at, and so that's kind of a little bit of a different scenario, but I think it's the same thing of, like, planning my trips with my friends, putting on the calendar, like, my weekends that are just for me and my partner and what we're gonna do and our trips, and planning all of that and seeing on the calendar gives you so much flexibility to say yes to other things because my partner and I this is a really good example for, like, if you have a partner, but my partner and I are the first ones to go through the calendar and be like, "This weekend, this weekend, this weekend," and we are taking a trip here, because it's if I don't plan that with him, then the time is just gonna go and I'm maybe gonna say yes to a bunch of things that are spontaneous that are gonna come up, and then we're gonna look back and be like, "Well, where was our quality time? Like, where did we spend that?" And then you're like, "Well, we just didn't plan it." And then I just kept saying yes to things that I wanted to say yes to. But now I have flexibility within constraints because I have 10 weekends in the year. I don't know how many we actually have, but say I have 10 weekends in the year that it's like, these are our weekends. This is what we're doing, and we're spending quality time together. Every weekend, we pick a date night for our next week. And so it's like, okay, I've made that plan. That's the plan that I make first. And then everything else that comes up is like, I'm flexible, like, I can do whatever I want. And I feel like sometimes people can hear that and be like, "What do you mean you can't do whatever you want when you're in a partnership," right? But it's important that you prioritize time with your partner, otherwise you're just, because right, if especially if you live with your partner, it's, like, very easy to just, like, be like, "Well, I see them all the time." But no, what about, like, quality intentional time together? And so we plan that every week, and then it's like, oh, if a random Thursday comes up and my friend's like, "Do you wanna go hike Mount Olympus?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not date night. Yeah, let's go do it." And then I don't feel any sort of guilt for, like, not being home to hang out with my partner or not going to do something with him, because it's like we already have our quality time scheduled and planned for us, and that feels so freeing because I am someone that would overthink and overanalyze and just be like, "Well, I should be doing this or I should be doing this." And I feel like I have struggled a little bit with, like, chronic dissatisfaction of just, like, I always feel like I should be doing something else, and I think in the world we live in, that is so easy to do, and how I have started planning things has helped me free up that and not feel like it's like, well, I am getting my podcast done, right? Like, I'm getting everything I need to get done. My episodes are coming out consistently every Thursday, and that is what matters. Yes, could I always spend more time on it? Like, today's a Sunday. I didn't plan to spend time on my podcast today, but I wanted to. And so it's like, well, even tomorrow night, it's like that is still my podcast night. But I'm also choosing to spend time on it right now, right? And then it's like, okay, so that's one night, and then the other night that I really need to plan is my date night. So it's like, okay, I've planned that. So now the rest of my week is open and flexible to other things. It's open to developing friendships and to running and to whatever else I want to. It's open to self-care. Like, maybe I'm going to plan a night for myself this week because I need it. And that leads me into also, like, you can overplan and you can overcommit yourself, and that feels like a lot too, and that is something I am, like, teetering on the edge of. I got home on Saturday night, and I felt like I just started crying. I was like, "This is too much." Like, I have overcommitted myself these past few weeks because I am trying to make friends, and I'm taking pottery classes right now, and I'm working on my podcast, and I'm training for a triathlon, and I'm doing a lot, and then I wanna say yes to things because that's how you have experiences and it's how you make friends, but also, you kinda have to give yourself your own mental energy and mental space, and once you start planning things and you're like, "Oh, I have freedom to do whatever I want in these constraints," it's like, well, it's so easy to overbook yourself because 'cause you're like, "Well, this night is free, and this night is free, and this night is free." Instead of being like, "Oh, like, I don't wanna make plans every night." I was making plans every night. I was making plans every morning. It was like activity, work, activity, activity, work, like, it was just every single day was activity, work, activity, and that is also not a freeing place to be in because, like, how do you then protect your own space and your own energy? And learning how to say no is also a really nice boundary that can feel really hard, but is really important because you need to think about how much can I fit in, and then where is the time for me to just be and see where my day goes. So, for example, I also plan weekends where I'd make no plans. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but if you don't plan it for yourself, then I just don't think it's going to happen. And so this weekend, I planned a weekend where I have pretty much no plans. I have one plan to run with a friend today. And the rest of my weekend was wide open because I was like, you know what? I just want to wake up when I want to wake up. I don't want to wake up to an alarm. I want to have coffee. I maybe want to go to the pottery studio and finish my pottery. I want to go to a coffee shop and I want to read or journal. I just want to do whatever I want to do. And I don't want to feel like I have to be somewhere. And as adults, I think that is so important because we always have things to do. Another thing I want to say about saying no is that something that I have struggled with is, right, overcommitting myself. And with that, sometimes I've committed myself to 5 things in the week. And by the time I get to the 5th thing, I don't feel like I can show up as my whole excitable self because I'm tired or, I recharge by being at home and being in my space and taking care of me. And if I know that and then I'm overcommitting myself, it's like I'm not holding space for the commitments that I've already made and giving those commitments maybe the respect that they deserve. And so what I have learned is that things will always come up. If you have openings in your calendar, things will come up. And it's okay to say no. And it's okay to ask yourself, yeah, like, does this sound like something that fits in with what I already have going on this week? And it is okay to say no. I have really had to learn not to take no's personally, but just to learn to invite people in and to say, this is what I'm doing if you want to come. And them saying no most of the time is probably not anything to do with you, but to do with their own capacity. And so also learning to respect other people's boundaries and the constraints that they've set themselves and how they're focusing their energy and what they need in their life. And then, yeah, just also prioritizing you and what you need and learning to say no and protecting your energy because you can't do it all. But there is something to be said about planning what you want to do first and then being able to say yes or no to the things that come in and out of your life. All right, guys, with that, I will leave you with I encourage you to sit down, whether it's monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, and just look at your calendar. Look what you have coming up. Something I learned from a podcaster once. She color codes things based on, yeah, like what kind of thing it is. Is it like a work thing? Is it a partner thing? Is it a fun thing? Is it a spontaneous thing? And so I've color coded my calendar where like pink is for me and my partner, and green is my color, and orange is like spontaneous and fun, and yellow is life-giving. And so it's like if I want to go do yoga or something, like that's considered life-giving. Something new is like pottery or a random new friend hangout. Blue is workouts. And so I've kind of color coded my calendar so that way I can see like which buckets am I filling and like which buckets need more filling, which buckets need less filling. Where am I spending your time? And once you can see like, okay, where am I spending my time? It's a lot easier to like put constraints and to see what needs to give and what needs to be added. And the one thing is like if something's added, something usually has to give. And that just helps me visualize what is going on in my life because let's be real, do any of us remember what we did last week? Like not really. I need to look at my calendar to be like, oh yeah, that's what I did last week. I literally write everything down now, which is crazy because, yeah, didn't used to do that. So I encourage you to take stock of what you're doing, where you're putting your time, what buckets are being filled, and maybe what buckets need some more filling. And ask yourself how you can create flexible boundaries for yourself in order to feel like you're not constantly feeling guilty for not doing something and you're not constantly wishing you were doing something else or wondering if you should be, because it is so easy to get lost in the overthinking and the overanalyzing. It's easy to get lost in the guilt of I should be doing something else. So this week, guys, I encourage you to just take stock of that, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to the Blue Rose Podcast. If you love this episode, please hit follow, leave a review, or send it to a friend who's building their own bold life. Keep trusting yourself, and I'll see you next week.